Evening, everybody, and happy hump day. So, happy hump day. Being hump day, that means it's Wednesday again, and if you're here, that means you're part of the group and what we do here, Wellbeing Wednesday. We're on episode 6, and if you're new, or if you're joining us on YouTube, Wellbeing Wednesday is our attempt at engaging with everybody in an interactive sense. So you have the opportunity to jump on here, be a part of the discussion, propose topics that are of interest to you regarding men's mental health. And so, as I said, episode 6 last week, Nathan continued along the theme of fear. Last week was the mechanics of fear. Now, what I'd like to do, and it was a great chat. What I'd like to do is tonight explain, or at least give an overview. This will probably take a few sessions, but tonight I'd like to give an overview on what's actually happening in our bodies when we feel fear, anxiety, stress, maybe flashbacks or nightmares from traumatic events. What's actually happening, and more specifically, not just in our bodies, but in our what's called our autonomic nervous system. So that's what we want to do tonight. I'll just wait for a few more people to come on board. But as I said, what we would love is for you guys to just tell us what you're interested in, what you want to know more about. Nathan does a great job, so we alternate. Nathan's doing a great job on motivating you guys. And due to what I do in my day job, I focus more on the technicalities. So I'm a therapist looking after anxiety, addiction, and trauma. So I break it down more. Nathan giddies you up, if you like, and I'll break down what's actually happening. But as I said, feel free to jump into the comment section, and there's about 3-4 sections in tonight, so I'll try in between each section to, one, make sure that everyone's understanding what we're on about, and two, answer any questions. So here we go. So what I'd like everyone to, by the end of this half hour or so, what I'm hoping you will learn from tonight is, one, what the autonomic nervous system is and how it actually hijacks us. And that is, what happens is involuntary. It happens independent from us, if you like. Then I'll explain the 3 states of the autonomic nervous system, what they are. And finally, the role of the autonomic nervous system in, again, trauma, anxiety, stress. In other words, what that response is when it senses danger. So here we go. What is, and don't be afraid about these big words, I'll explain it in a minute. What is the autonomic nervous system? Well, right now, as you're listening to me over the last couple of minutes, there are a lot of things that happen in our body that we are not aware of and we don't consciously control. We couldn't possibly. Our heart is beating, our digestive system's doing its work on our dinner, our body temp is maintained, etc., etc. These are all biological processes, and they are directed by the autonomic nervous system. And it's only called autonomic because it happens outside of our control. In other words, these nervous system directed responses are involuntary, or they happen to us, and that's an important thing to realize when we break it down into later on. When, for example, a traumatic event happens to us, it's important to realize it's outside of our control what our response is, as it happens independently from us. Most of the time we're totally unaware of all those things. As I said, they're biological processes that keep us alive. And funny enough, that is the autonomic nervous system's job, is to keep us alive. Now, it's primitive in that sense, as is, some of you would have heard me speaking about the amygdala. The amygdala is this tiny pea-sized thing in the brain. Think of it as kind of like the smoke alarm. And it's in there, and it's constantly monitoring for anything that might be happening external to us in the environment, looking for possible danger. And what happens if it senses danger? First up, I won't go too deep into it today, I want to stick on the nervous system, but it pattern matches past experiences. It senses danger, it forwards it to our friend the autonomic nervous system, who makes a decision. It's a very old system, and it's sensitive to threat. So it picks up on the tiniest of cues, and then it responds to them. You got to bear in mind, so when I say primitive, this goes back to the day when, we could have got eaten by whatever, a dinosaur or something. So the nervous system responds to a threat to ensure our survival. So we've all experienced that, whether it's a panic attack, whether it's, you think you're getting in a fight in the pub or whatever it is. And what happens next, when you get the sweaty palms and everything that Nathan spoke about last week, it's basically the nervous system to ensure our survival. It has to take over. And when it takes over, it does lots of things. It shuts down, for a start, it shuts down your rational brain, which is not really a good thing. That's why you do stupid things when the adrenaline pumps. It floods your body with the chemicals like adrenaline and cortisol. And these all have a purpose, like increasing your heart rate, because, the heart pumps the blood to the muscles, and that's getting ready to fight or flight, as you would have heard before. But as I mentioned a minute ago, it's important that you understand this is not in your control. Sorry, I'll just check messages and stuff. So yeah, none of this is in your control. It's basically happening to you. And it's important to realize that as we go along. So why is this important? These involuntary nervous system responses happen precisely because there is a perceived threat. There is a danger. This gets even worse. For example, any of you guys that are ex-forces and may have experienced trauma, for example, as in PTSD, what happens is, if we have experienced trauma, these responses will happen whenever our system picks up any sort of, even if it's a perceived cue, any cue that resembles the trauma. It's often out of our awareness. We don't know what's happening until we start panicking. Suddenly a whole host of processes then take place. It'll feel like anxiety. Your nervous system at this stage is responding right now, in that moment, as it did whenever the traumatic event happened. It assumes that that the situation you're in now, even though you might be, I don't know, down the supermarket or something, is the same as when the traumatic event happened. So it's basically your nervous system is taken over. It hijacks your physiology, in other words. But it's well intentioned because it's doing it in an attempt to make you safe. So if you've ever experienced, a fright or a panic attack, anxiety in a moment, it's literally your nervous system is taken over. It's pattern matched back to a previous danger, and it's trying to get you out of trouble. So it hijacks the system. So hang on, guys, I'll just see what's happening here online. Evening, Nathan, Ben, Stuart, Jack. Great. Jack, is anxiety related to that part of the brain? Like it overreacts to dangers, etc.? Yeah, absolutely. So it's keep commenting, guys, if I'm not making sense. So like I said, the amygdala, that's sitting there up in your brain, and it gets the senses, or it gets the signals from your senses, such as smell, sound, sight, etc. And that's why anyone with PTSD, they'll hear a bang or a smell or whatever it is, and it brings them back to that place. That's the pattern matching. And then the nervous system, because it has to be autonomic, it's independent, and it takes over, because it's trying to ensure your survival. But it shuts down all of, like, the rational brain is the part that, it sits there and it analyzes, and it's able to make an objective judgment. But this primitive part of us and the nervous system, that shuts all of it down, and it basically just says, right, I've got to save Jack, and that's all it cares about. So yeah, it shuts everything down, and as I said, it hijacks the system. It secretes those chemicals, the adrenaline, the cortisol, and everything. But the thing is, the primary objective is to keep us safe. So it'll shut down things like your immune system. It sends glucose into the blood. It pumps more blood into the muscles. You sweat because that is to lower your temperature in case you're going to run or fight or whatever. So all these things are, as I said, autonomic. So it's taken part outside of your control. So, as I said, quick recap, that's the autonomic nervous system works involuntarily from us. It's very sensitive to any sort of cues of perceived danger. And it's, how would I say it? Our job, especially me, what I do as a therapist, but any of us, when we understand what's happening, is our job is to then make that smoke alarm, if you like, respond only to smoke that's currently present instead of smoke from something that happened 3 years ago, if that makes sense. So it's understanding what's happening and learning how to control it. And the only way we control it is by calming down our brain enough so that the rational part of our brain turns back on. So yeah, so how the autonomic nervous system works is it's got 3 states, and the natural normal state, if there's nothing happening in your life, it's often called it can be called the safe state, but it makes more sense to call it the socially engaged state. And funny enough, socially engaged, as you know, socially engaged is, when we're able to converse and make friends and stuff like that. And the nerve in the nervous system that is linked to socially engaged, when we're socially engaged, it actually links, and I found this amazing, it links our heart to our face muscles. And In other words, when we feel safe, we slow down, and we feel safe and happy, and therefore we're able to engage with other people. And I suppose that shows in our face, when we're able to smile and build rapport, etc. So yeah, it's fascinating. Then when we sense danger, some danger, that's what a lot of you would have heard of, is the fight or flight response. When that happens, the nervous system adds energy to our body. It speeds up our release cortisol, adrenaline. Your heart beats faster. Again, like I said, to send blood to the muscles, and it's all about surviving. The problem is, for anybody there that's been in any sort of angry sort of situation, we find it very hard to think clearly. And that's, like, as I said earlier, the rational brain has been shut down because the nervous system is basically, it overrides everything, and it senses a threat, and then it's like, it shuts down what it considers all of the non-important things, and it focuses on keeping us alive. But the other part, which we don't hear very often, it's fight, flight, but the other one is freeze. Now, freeze or shut down, it's when that threat is so overwhelming, or we feel that's so dangerous. It could be, if you were in combat, or it could be in, a horrific car, whatever it is, that was so overwhelming that the nervous system believes that the only solution is literally to shut you down. So you just freeze, and you got no idea what to do. So yeah, as I said, so socially engaged, happy days, you're able to engage with the world, you're in a happy state. Fight or flight is when the nervous system speeds up and secretes those chemicals, getting us ready to either fight or run away. And in the other sense, the nervous system, if it goes into that freeze state, instead of speeding up, it literally slows down and shuts us right down. And that is actually, that freeze state is the body's oldest defense mechanism. And I'll mention it in a minute again regarding trauma, and especially trauma in relation to guilt. I'll just, before I go on to the next stage, let's say again. So we've got people suffering with PTSD and anxiety. PTSD caused by anxiety. I've suffered trauma and loss, over worry. Yeah, breathing is really, it's good for the anxiety, and the reason anxiety is good is anxiety. The reason the breathing, as in especially something like 7-Eleven, is the out breath. So you have the sympathetic nerve and the parasympathetic. So the sympathetic one is the one that shoots that up that I just mentioned, the fight or flight, and it gets you elevated heartbeat and panicking. And the parasympathetic is the opposite. Now, to get the parasympathetic nerve working is that out breath. So yeah, you're doing right with the breathing, but as long as 7-Eleven is 7 breaths in, or 7 seconds the breath in, 11 seconds breath out. But don't worry about the numbers, just make sure that the out breath is longer than the in breath. Joe, would you consider these responses the same as the emotional responses to people with bipolar disorder? Yeah, the bipolar disorder we'll do that another day, Joe, but because it's sort of, that goes into the mania and depression, etc. But yeah, everything is certainly linked, and that's a step further, more extreme, just like depression is more extreme as well. Like, we're just further down the track with the chemical imbalance that's caused by all of this. I think I said it at the start, like tonight really, this will be an overview. And I'm going to personally on my own channel over the next 5 days. I'll be doing videos each day on this. But for sure, in the comments, if you guys just want to, and that's what this Wednesday night is about. Tell us what topics you guys want us to talk about, and in which direction you want us to go. How does bipolar work? Again, that'll have to be for another night, but I will answer all of these comments after tonight's video. Hope you're all happy with that. So the role of, I'll just get back into the role of the nervous system in trauma. When I say trauma, it could be chronic stress, panic attacks. I'm just going to explain what actually happens, when we get into that fight or flight. So trauma and threat. I want to just emphasize again that these nervous system shifts so you're socially engaged, happy days, and then you either, depending on what happens, you shift into fight or flight, or you shut down. These are things that happen to us. They happen involuntarily. So if you think of a person who's feeling terror, absolute terror, like I've never had the panic attacks that some of my clients explain to me, and it sounds debilitating. But if you think of a person who's feeling terror and whose body moves into the panic of fight or flight, it's not conscious, it's not cowardly, it's not a decision. You've got nothing to say in the matter. So the person, if we break it down to, I think it was Jack, somebody said about anxiety earlier. So if you're chronically anxious, that's, you've moved, your nervous system has sped up from socially engaged, it's now gone into fight or flight. The same with, I think I've seen a few people on here in this group struggling with anger. So rages, all that kind of stuff. That's fight or flight. On the other hand, if we get into that clinical depression, that's your nervous system now has slowed down and you're going into a very low energy. Any of you that's ever had depression, you know that. No energy, no motivation. That's the nervous system has gone in the opposite sense. It's gone into that freeze, into that shutdown mode. And again, some of you with PTSD, I've seen it with a lot of people, it's often you suffer with what, and it's only perceived, but it's, you believe, you feel guilty, you feel shame, especially with us males, you feel, I think it's the macho thing. It's like, oh, I should have done, I could have done more, I should have stood up to the bully, I should have saved my friend, whatever it is. Again, it's, you had no say in the matter. If it was assault or whatever it was, your system shutting down and moving into that freeze response. It wasn't your response. It was your nervous system basically in that moment. It takes control. And because that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to take control and save us. So if you're feeling guilty or ashamed because of something that happened in that moment, you've got to understand that it wasn't you. It's our system is designed to keep us safe. But on a positive note, going forward, and some of the stuff I see, it's when you start working on that, it's interesting to ask yourself questions in those moments. So when you're in socially engaged state and you ask yourself questions like, I am this, the world is, I am happy, I am successful, I am whatever, the world is beautiful, the world is shit. It's based, each of those sort of statements are based on it's not just our view of the world, it's what state our nervous system is in when we ask ourselves that question. So obviously the trick is to get ourselves, from what I've explained so far, the ideal is to be in that socially engaged state. It's, we're chemically balanced, we're happy, and everything is as it should be. Because when we're in that, and that's another thing, our autonomic nervous system, because like what I said at the start, it controls so much. It controls our organs, it controls our immune system, digestive system. If we're in a stress state, it's not looking after them in a healthy way. It actually suppresses them, because its first job is to keep us alive. So its priority in those moments is, don't worry, shut down the immune system. That's fine for 3 minutes. You're in a fight or whatever. But it's not so good if you're constantly in that fight or flight, heightened awareness, on edge, constantly anxious. If we live like that, that means that our nervous system is constantly shutting down our organs, our immune system, our sleep patterns. It's releasing the wrong chemicals from our brain, the wrong hormones, etc., if that makes sense. So yeah, as I said, that's an overview. Trauma is a big part, like the autonomic nervous system is massive in trauma. We got to understand trauma is, and this is where, I don't know how many of you guys have seen therapists and they do cognitive behavior and all these kind of things. You got to realize that it's in the body. It's what our nervous system is doing and shutting down different parts of us in order to keep us alive. Because it's primitive, it's only designed for a quick fix, and then you're supposed to, fight, run away, whatever, and then get back to that balanced state. But this modern world that we're living in means that a lot of us are consciously on edge, and therefore all these other things are affected. So if you're feeling any of these, and if you need to work on those kind of things, let me know if you want to, do a follow-up to this. But in short, it's about getting out of that heightened state and getting back to a calm state. So I think it was Jack or somebody that said earlier, breathing is massive, and a few other things. Ask the questions in the comments, and I'm happy to talk about it. But the number one is getting back to that hormonal balance and that chemical balance and the socially engaged state for the nervous system. A few more. BPD. Yeah, Joe, you're at borderline personality disorder. Sorry, I was mixing you up with Kieran afterwards about bipolar. Ian, my fault is always aggression, be it verbal or physical. Yeah, that's the anger that we mentioned earlier on, which is to fight or fly. And it all comes back, as I said, the nervous system, it's primitive, just like the amygdala is, and it's designed for another age, and it's going to take us, evolution-wise, it's going to take a long time for it to catch up with us. So right now we're using primitive parts of the brain to respond to this modern world, and the best we can do is understand what's happening in our body, which is what tonight was about, and then finding ways, like understand what our triggers are, understand what it is we can do to not be triggered, and to keep on that balanced state, if that makes sense. Okay, guys, let's see where we're at. Any more questions, guys? What'd be really good is if if you can just tell us in the comments any other topics or anything you want to me to expand on. I will answer these comments about the bipolar disorder, the what else did we have? Borderline personality disorder, and the PTSD. Anything else, guys? No, all good. We'll have knitting up again next week. And depending on what you reply on here, I'll prepare something for my next time on here. All right, cheers, guys.